This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the bottom feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about getting payments and how far you should go when a customer is late on their payment. I'll give you some tips and some common practices in the industry and some ways to avoid late payments really affecting your business and bringing your bottom line and your profit margin down. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. If you're dealing with continuous late payers, this could really be a real drag on the profit of your business. I had a member of my group where he was in an area where everyone paid late because he bought the pool route and the previous owner was very casual, I guess I would say would be the word, as far as getting payments from customers. He would sometimes even forget to invoice them. And so he inherited a lot of customers that had this kind of lax way of paying their pool service. And this is something that they tried to rectify, but at least 10% of their customers, which is a pretty big percentage, were always late, making it very difficult for them to run their business. And then they would stop service, and then the customer would pay, then they would restart service. It was really messy, and that's something that you really want to deal with. So I think the first step of any successful business is to make sure that the late payers are a minimal percentage. 10% seems pretty high to me. If you can get the late payers down to 2 or 3% of your customers, I think you're going to do well there. And you can budget around the late payers then in that case. Now, billing is something that is dependent on your area and kind of how you've been doing things and how you prefer to do things. Now, some customers kind of balk at the idea of paying 1 full month in advance. They feel a little bit unsure about doing that, especially if the service, they may think, if they're new and they want to see how you're doing and they want to make sure that you're doing the proper service. So billing 1 full month in advance usually is done by larger companies. And you can set it up that way so that for the month of, let's say, September, you will bill on September 1st and the payment is due, by the 10th of that month for that month. It's a little bit harder to do, I think, in a lot of cases. And most companies, at least smaller companies like myself, will send invoices out on the 20th of the month, and the customer has that 10-day period to pay by the 1st, or 12-day period, I guess. And then you have a 10-day grace period at that point to get the payment. And more than likely, the majority of your customers are going to pay you sometime, maybe before the 1st or that first week when the bill is due. And there may be a small percentage that won't pay at that point. So when do you pull the plug on service? Well, it's really important to have a service agreement that the customer signs. And the service agreement is not a binding contract in any form or fashion, but it is an outline of what you're going to do at the pool and what they're responsible for. Interesting enough, if you don't have one of these and then you try to collect on a late payment, it's really unclear. The customer doesn't know, when are you going to stop service or what's considered late. And all these things need to be in writing for that purpose so that the customer is aware that after X amount of days, the pool service will be paused until you get the payment. And so if you want a copy of my one-page service agreement, where there is a section on payment and late fees and when service will be paused. You can email me at david@swimmingpoollearning.com. Again, that's david@swimmingpoollearning.com. And I'll definitely get that over to you. It's in Word format. You can alter it and make changes. I make it one page to keep it simple. It's not too scary for the customer when they're looking at a one-page agreement. And there really isn't a lot of the owner's responsibilities listed here. It's just 6 lines here where I talk about what the owner is responsible for to make it simple and easy. And most of it is, of course, what I'm doing at the pool. And then their section does have a section on what happens when they're late. So if they're not paid by the 10th of the month, they're going to have a $10 late fee. And if they haven't paid by the 15th of the month, service will be paused. Now, it's not discontinued. Service is just paused at that point. And of course, during that week, they're going to get reminders. And if they don't pay within that time period, then service will be discontinued by the end of the month. By then, the pool is going to start to be brought to their attention. And I have mentioned this before that pool service, yes, is at the top of our mind because that's how we make a living. But for the customer, they may not go in their backyard all week. They may not use their pool. So the pool is kind of out of their sight, out of their mind. And when they get an invoice for pool service, they're not really thinking about it. You know, they're paying their car payment. Maybe they have other bills that are more pressing. And the pool service bill gets put on the back burner. Now, sometimes if it's a customer that I've had for a while, you know, a year or two, and I understand people get busy, they go on vacation, they get behind on their bill payments. It's something that happens in certain cases. So what I'll do with customers like this, since I bill on the 20th of the month, I'll just send them a bill again with both months of service with a total on there. And more than not, they'll pay the bill that first week, the following first week, or right away actually after I send it to them, and they'll come current at that point. Very rarely will I have a customer I've had for a year, 2 years, 3 years, not come current when I do that. So what you're doing is you're training customers. If you have a customer that's fairly new and they're paying late, this is how you kind of train them to get on schedule and see that your pool service bill is a priority. If you stop service or pause service, their pool starts to turn, and you can even add into the service agreement if you wanted to. I haven't put this in there, but you can add it in there saying that if there's extra chemicals to turn the pool back, they'll have to pay for that. I just do that verbally. I'll tell the customer that I'm pausing service as of the 15th. With a text message is probably the best way to do it. And if you want me to resume service, and if the pool needs some extra shock or algicide because the pool, of course, I paused service and I wasn't there that week or in 2 weeks, then you'll have to pay for the extra chemicals, you know, and that's something that you kind of deal on a case-to-case basis. Sometimes skipping a week, the pool's fine. Sometimes it won't be. But your whole thing is to bring to the customer's attention that the pool service bill is a priority and you will pause service at that point. Again, it's on a case-to-case basis. Usually if it's someone new that's paying late and maybe they've been late a couple times already, this is kind of a way to train them by just pausing service. And the logic behind it is that they can't catch up at some point and they'll just pretty much cancel service or let service discontinue and they'll call someone else because let's just say you charge $180 a month and you let it go for a 3-month period. That means the customer has to write a check for $540 to come current to continue service if you let it go past 2 months and you're entering the 3rd month, which for a lot of people, $540 is something that they can't sustain and something they can't pay, and so they'll just kind of find someone else to do the pool at that point, which does happen out there. So you don't want them to fall too far behind because then it becomes a point where it doesn't make any sense for the customer to pay you when they can just hire someone new, and you have very little recourse for pool service. Now, you can't file a mechanics lien for weekly pool service against the customer. What you can do, and this has been done before, I don't know how effective it is or if it's something that you would want to do, but you can actually hire a company to collect money from them and put them in collections for it. But it gets complicated at that point because then they're going to probably trash you on Yelp or Google reviews, and you don't really want that. It's better, I think, in some cases just let things go if you get to that point. But you shouldn't get to that point if you're doing things correctly and you have this business model where you know that if they get past a certain mark, they won't be able to catch up, and it doesn't make any sense to either party to let them go that long. So I would say the 15-day mark of that month is your cutoff with many reminders and many messages. Now, if the customer tells you, well, I just have trouble paying because I miss it or I don't pay attention, is there any way I can do auto billing? Yes, get them on auto billing if you can. Get them to pay you with a credit card every month if that's the way you want to do it. However you want to handle that, if they're asking for a way to auto bill, definitely put them on there. And if you have extra charges, of course, it's going to be probably a month delay for you to get that if they are on auto billing and they have to go in there and edit anything. But this is something that you can implement and set up. The nice thing about software like Skimmer is that you can send reminders, you can schedule reminders without having to think about it. Because a lot of times we forget to remind the customer. So having an automated reminder for the customer that, hey, your invoice is late is something that's really helpful in business, and it takes your mind away from doing that. And just automating those kind of reminders is perfect. And you can set it up to where if they don't pay by the 10th, they get an automated reminder. And so that's kind of how you handle the pool service when you want to make sure that you stop service at a certain time and you get your payments by the first week of the month. Again, if you want to try billing at the first of the month for that whole month, you can try that. But typically, if you bill at about the 20th of the month, that gives the customer usually plenty of time to pay you by the 1st and to pay you by the 15th. I mean, that's almost a 30-day net right there for the customer. And that should be enough time for them to pay you without you having to pause service. If it's, again, a customer that is periodically late all the time and is causing you a lot of stress, you may just want to move that customer off your pool route at some point so that you can get customers that pay you on time, because that really keeps you in business. If you have, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, 10% of your customers are late, and if you're making $8,000 a month, that means that $800 is outstanding, which is a lot of money to be outstanding in your business. You have to float that and try to collect that. And the frustration factor of trying to collect from people all the time is something that you just don't have time for. And it's better not to have them on your pool route at some point if that is a constant problem with that customer. Now, what about a install that you don't get paid for? Well, in the service agreement that I have here, it says payment for any repair work is due upon completion. And you should keep this model with most of your customers. Now, if you have long-term customers, I'll bill them sometimes for something, $600, $800 at the end of the month instead of getting it right away. If they've been with me for 5 or 6 years, or if there's someone I can trust, I won't bill them immediately. Sometimes I'll just put it in the service bill. But in most cases, you want to get the payment when the job is complete. A lot of times you can call the customer that same day and take their credit card. And if you have a Square account, enter all that information. If you have a Square terminal or a swiper, you can have the customer swipe their credit card right there. Sometimes customers will leave a check out there for you, before you even finish the work. That's nice too. You just scan the check into your bank. So however you want to operate, you just don't want to be doing a lot of work. And I mentioned the 30% deposit. You definitely want to get a 30% deposit for a green pool cleanup or any kind of repairs for people that you don't even know, because you don't know if they're going to stiff you later. And there are certain payments to avoid. Like, for instance, I wouldn't take a PayPal payment for any work completed because PayPal is really not vendor friendly. What I mean by that is that the customer can easily reverse the charge from PayPal, saying that they didn't get the product or the work wasn't completed. And it's really hard to fight that. It's much harder to do that on other platforms. So if you have a Square account, definitely that's pretty safe and secure to take the payment from the customer that way. And I recommend getting a Square account. You can get one for free. And then you can either get the Square terminal or the little Dougal that you could put on your phone or tablet. And this will let you collect payments instantly from the customers on the spot. This is something that you should implement in your business, and there should be no hesitation from the customer when you're addressing them the first time when you meet them, saying, yeah, I'm going to install the pump and motor here. Here's the charge. can you pay 30% now? And if you have the Square terminal or the Square swiper, you can collect that 30% and then send them an email that you've received that. And then at the end, when it's done, you take the rest of the payment. So it's pretty easy, and it's something that a lot of servicers do, and it's something that you should implement to avoid not getting paid for a pretty big job sometimes, that could be in the thousands of dollars. So here's my procedure. Let's say I install a new pump for the customer. I charge them $1,500. I get the 30% at the beginning. So that's $450. 2 hours later, I send them a Square invoice for the balance, which is $1,050. And they should pay that within 24 to 48 hours usually. If they don't pay that, then I'll send them a reminder. Now, if they don't pay at all, I can't go back there and cut out the equipment because once you install it, it becomes part of their property. So what's your recourse if they don't pay the balance at that point? Well, you can maybe put a mechanic lien on the home, which is something you can do if you're a contractor. Now, if you're not a contractor, in most states, they won't allow you to put a lien on the customer's property. And you can check with your state, the regulations. I know in California, generally a general contractor can put a lien on, and certain subcontractors can as well if they're licensed. And again, check to see maybe if a D35 license, you're allowed to put a mechanic's lien on the property. But that doesn't really do you much good because you can't collect on that until the customer refinances or sells their house. Plus you have to go to court to file it, and it's really messy sometimes, especially if you don't have the proper license to do this. And so I would say try not to get to this point. You can go to small claims court as well and try to sue them for the balance. And then it gets pretty rough at that point. You can generally tell when someone is kind of shaky as far as personality when you meet them. And I would say that if you are doing a bid and you're feeling kind of weird about it, your first instinct, your gut instinct is usually right. And so I would maybe not accept that customer or do that project if it feels kind of weird at that point. And you can refer them to a bigger company or a pool store like Leslie's that installs and they take payments. That's fine. But you can just tell them, oh, I don't have time really to do this job. I realize that I'm pretty booked up. But I can tell you if you call Leslie's Pool Supply, they'll come here and they'll install it. You can actually make payments on it and, anything to kind of get you out of there. If you're doing a green pool cleanup and they don't want to pay you the 30% down, you can explain to them that that's for chemicals. I'm going to be shocking the pool. Or if you're going to buy flock to flock it, that's part of the process to pay for that. And if they say they'll pay you when they finish, you finish because they don't know if you're going to do a good job or not. I would walk on that as well. I wouldn't, of course, do the green pool cleanup. And by the way, I also have a green pool cleanup agreement that you can have the customer sign as well. But if they're not willing to pay you that 30% down, then I definitely wouldn't do the job for them because what are the odds of them paying you the 100% balance at the end of the job if they're balking at paying 30% at the beginning? Bottom line is to have some set parameters in your business. Don't bend on those parameters and don't let customers go too far without paying you. If someone is not going to pay you for a repair or an install, you kind of get the sense of it at the beginning and then make your deposit high enough to cover that. So if you feel like, well, this customer may not pay me, then a 50 or 60% deposit would be logical in some cases. Most people aren't going to pay the whole amount up front. Just get that out of the way right now. I wouldn't pay, someone to do something, all the money up front. It doesn't make a lot of sense. If it's a vendor that I deal with a lot and they need the money up front, maybe I'll do that. But in most cases, they only ask for a deposit or nothing at all in some cases. If you have a relationship with the customer, and if it's a regular customer and you're going to do an install of a pump or filter, getting the 30% is something that, again, is something you may want to do, may not want to do. You can just charge them for the whole amount, especially if they've been with you 3 or 4 years and they're regular customers. That may not be necessary. The deposit is mainly for new customers that you don't know or special jobs like acid washes and green pool cleanups when you're not sure if the customer is going to pay the balance. And it's one of those things where it's like anything in business, there's trust for you and the customer has to trust you as well. And sometimes, again, you can tell right away when someone may not want to pay you just by kind of their personality, how the house looks, how the property looks. And in that situation, passing may be the best thing you can do to save you a headache and problems collecting later on. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those by subscribing Monday through Friday, of course, here on my YouTube channel. And then you can go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a drop-down menu of other podcasts for you to listen to. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.